Now you're listening to Fantastic Formosa with Joh Abrams in Taipei. Here we are again, another episode, Fantastic Formosa with John. Hey, we got a guest today, a new guest, Richard, who's here studying Chinese, and he's retired, U.S. Marine Corps. And when you retire in the U.S. government, the U.S. military, you get something called an educational benefit program where you can go anywhere in the world and study anything you want. But before we talk about that program, we're going to talk about Richard. And Richard, thanks for coming on.
No problem, John. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Hey, you've been here how long?
Roughly seven and a half years.
7.5 years. That's a long time.
2 months after retiring from the Marine Corps back in 2017, roughly July.
Right. Okay. All right. So, where were you before you decided to come to Taiwan exactly?
I was in Marine Corps Base Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. With both 2nd Law Enforcement Battalion, pretty much field MPs, and then after that, base MPs again.
Military police, MPs, yeah. So, long before this all happened, where'd you grow up?
Well, funny thing about that, because I come from an Air Force family. My granddad was in the Air Force from the late 50s to early 80s. Mm-hmm. My father from 79 to 05.
Okay.
And I grew up, I was born in England at Bentwaters Royal Air Force Base in England.
Okay.
But then also growing up in Japan and about 12 different states in the U.S.
Well, that's a very typical life for an Army or Air Force or Navy, what we call brat. B-R-A-T, brat. So you're a military brat or an Air Force brat, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. These kids often have very good social skills because they jump from school to school to school all over the world, and they learn to make friends very quickly. So that's a very good talent to have. You were in Japan for how long?
86 to 89.
And that was your, what year, junior high? No, I don't know how old you are, Richard. Well, what grades in school was
Kindergarten, first grade, and whatnot.
All right. Did you pick up any Japanese, or were you pretty much on the base all the time?
From what my parents told me, before we actually lived on Kadena Air Force Base, we lived out in town. Apparently, me and my older brother picked up some kanji.
Oh.
But it's been a few decades, and I've forgotten it.
All right. So in American military, we have family housing programs. And sometimes you live on base, and sometimes you live off base, depending on the situation, particularly how dangerous a country might be. So you were living in Okinawa.
Yes, sir.
All right. Did you ever come down here for a visit?
That part I know never happened. We pretty much, just, as far as I can remember, stayed on Okinawa the whole time.
Oh, wow. Now, that's a small island.
Well, it's actually a lot more to do than people realize, but when you're a 5, 6-year-old kid, it may seem small, but I remember crawling around Kadena Air Base and having a fun time there.
Sure, yeah, running around the base. Do children mostly get ignored by the military when you're running around the base like that, or do they keep you under control?
Oh, back then we would just run around base housing. When you're there, you're not having a problem. Most of us just stood in our neighborhood, so to speak.
Sure, yeah. And you heard things, probably.
Oh, well, once
heard secrets and.
Oh, I'm not sure what my dad did. I know he worked on the SR-71 F-16s at the time, so my knowledge in aircraft from ground pounder is a little high for someone that's not an aircraft mechanic.
Now, he just used the word ground pounder, and that's somebody who is in the Army normally who fights on the ground. We call him ground pounder. You're pounding the ground. So he comes from an Air Force family, and, of course, that is not a ground pounding pounders. But he mentioned the SR-71. Now, that aircraft, I think, was the fastest in the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
and it was the only spy plane never to be shot down, I think, right?
Yes.
And operated in Okinawa, and it flew into North Korea, right?
Over the Soviet Union. All they would do to get out of missile range is just increase their speed.
To like the moon. They just retired it, what?
I think it was 1999 or 2000 because I was living at Beale Air Force Base when they retired the old bird.
Oh, my God. That was a sad, sad day. There was nothing wrong with it. People were saying things like, if it still works, keep using it. And it was famous aircraft because it was made by Lockheed in what they call the Skunk Works program.
Kelly Johnson.
Kelly Johnson. If you ever get a chance. So did you actually see the aircraft on base?
Oh, yes, I did. I remember seeing it once take off.
Uh-huh.
And if you go to Beale Air Base, you can tell which hangars it would initially start at.
All right.
Because the front and back are completely open when they start the engine due to the exhaust.
Oh, my God. This thing was so fast and it could fly so high that what was it they say that it literally got longer?
Actually, the plane itself, when it's on the ground, leaks a lot. But what happens is the air, you're going so fast, the air itself heats the airframe,
right.
So it expands to actually seal itself.
Oh my God! It just scares you. The mere thinking of. I assume they had parachutes in case.
They had something. Did they ever have to use it?
No,
as far as I heard, no.
They did. I would never want to be ejected from a SR-71 at Mach what?
3+ and 80,000 feet.
80,000 feet. You might as well just keep going to the moon. So you had a very unusual childhood. So I find it very strange that, here you are in an Air Force family and all these exotic bases and locations around the world. And then when you graduated high school, I guess, in the military, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I did.
It was a military high school. So did your family say, okay, son, time for the Air Force?
Well, that's more of my grandfather, how he was. But my father, he did not care what branch you joined.
As long as you joined a branch.
Well, it's your choice on that. If you don't want to join, that's your choice.
Uh-huh.
Myself, when I was in Okinawa as a kid, I remember going to Fatima Air Station at an air show playing with the machine guns for displays.
As we all do.
And it's like, yeah, I want to do this. But later finding out they also have embassy duty.
Oh.
So later on I would do, that's the amount of travel. You can go to countries you've never even heard of or places you don't believe exists, like the country, the capital Ouagadougou.
It doesn't exist.
I know it does. But
what's the name of this country?
Oh, that's the capital, Ouagadougou. I forgot which country. It's not Mali, but I think it's in Central African Republic.
You were there.
Well, not that one, but I was stationed in Ghana, West Africa.
Well, that's well known. Yeah, that's fairly well known. Sure.
But temporarily assigned duty, or TAD, over to Lomé, Togo.
Yeah, temporary TDY, right?
That's the Air Force term. Marine Corps is TAD, temporarily assigned duty.
Right, okay. You're going to hear these phrases, TDY or TDA or whatever, and it means temporary duty. And that normally lasts, 6 months?
Whatever. Honestly depends on your job and the situation. As an embassy guard, that's vastly different.
And that can be a policy, just State Department decision as well, right?
I was only there in Togo for 4 days.
And
Sweden for duty with Condoleezza Rice, at the time the Secretary of State. For Stockholm, Sweden for 4 days also.
Okay. She's a very famous statesperson. One of the few that I think I respect reasonably well. A lot of them I do not.
Guarded the lady twice. Once in Paris, France, and then again in Stockholm.
She recognize you?
She did. She's got a sharp memory. But also, I remember her security chief.
Yeah.
All right, this lady, the term Amazon would apply. Reason being is she's about 2 meters tall.
Tall.
Yeah, and how she carried herself also.
She was in sports quite a bit as a young
woman.
Not
necessarily Condoleezza Rice, but her security chief.
Oh, his security chief. Okay.
thing is, that lady was about 2 meters tall, and she knew how to carry herself. Luckily, I was the response NCO, or pretty much that came up with the plans for our building in Paris.
Right.
The lady asked, like, hey, where is this part at? Yeah, you want to take these routes? I'm the response NCO. Whatever you need to know about this building, I can answer that question.
Right. Good. Excellent. Yeah. So you had an amazing career. Now, growing up on these military bases and things like that, did you... I mean, you grew up in America, part of it as well, right? You grew up where? What parts of America were you in?
Oh, the last one being Beale Air Force Base, California, northwest of Sacramento.
All right.
Then later, before that, Pope Air Force Base, now Pope Army Air Station.
Oh, okay.
Before that, Bergstrom Air Force Base, outside Austin, Texas, now Austin International Airport. Mm-hmm. Prior to that, Kadena Air Force Base in Okinawa.
That was Okinawa. Okay. But I'm just wondering, some of these young kids I meet that grow up to be adults who are brats, travel around the world and never really know much about America. They finally go back and they go, I don't know why everyone's laughing at this joke. Wow. So you didn't suffer from that too much?
No, I was generally thinking about myself. I like to go out and play in the woods, so I guess that would come handy later in the Marine Corps.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I did as well. Growing up in a farming community. It's hard to replace that kind of experience in today's America. We have something called helicopter parents. And helicopter parents in America, they're scared for their children because of all the bad news. So they literally drive their kids to school, pick them up at the end of the day, and make sure they get home safely. But when I was a kid, we would often disappear for hours after school in the woods, building a tree fort or something silly. Occasionally we did get hurt, but we were able to play. And today's children, at least over the past 25 years, have not been able to go out on their own with their other friends. This is so we call them helicopter parents. It really destroys the childhood of many of a child's lives. You sounds like you had a regular childhood, basically, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and but you never knew when you were going to be shipped off. Maybe your dad would be shipped off to another country, or
sometimes he'd be there, and then the next day he's gone. See you in 6 months, or in the case of say his Korean deployment, see you in a year.
Wow. So you didn't get to go to Korea. That's still considered a country under conflict, right?
Well, Army has families there.
Uh-huh.
Just his case, what his specialty was, working on U-2s.
Oh, yeah. U-2 spy planes. They had U-2 spy planes in Taiwan for a while during the 1950s. Those were retired not all that long ago either.
No, they're still used.
They're still in place?
Yes, okay. They are. And they are a lot bigger than their predecessor.
Really? They've expanded the wings?
That's putting it lightly.
Lengthened or?
Overall.
All right.
But they still have a chaser car.
Okay.
How the U-2s would land, it can't see how it lands. So if you look at how it lands, you'll see a car behind it every time.
All right.
Because they guide the pilot down.
Okay.
Funny story, when they were landing, I forgot which base in the Middle East, they actually went to Lamborghini because they needed fast cars to do.
Lamborghini.
Well, they actually needed it to actually run as pace cars because of how quick they have to go.
Oh, man.
Before, they used to have Camaros that were souped up to do the job.
Right.
But some of these countries, they don't have Camaros at this air base. Okay, what else can we get to actually be a pace car that can keep up?
You can call a local prince and say, hey, you're not going to believe what we need. But
they actually called Lamborghini, and they were actually able to officially do it.
And it was a great commercial for them.
That part I'm not sure, but they'd be quiet on that because of U-2s.
For a year or two before it ends up in a poster. Yeah, I did have a friend that flew a couple times as a joyride, they call it, for media. And he got to go up there, and he said it's real. You see the curvature of the Earth. You look up, and then it's space. That's all you see.
Wearing the space suit also, otherwise your blood will boil.
Yeah, you have to wear space suits, and I said once would have been enough for me. I don't think I have to go up twice. So they are still operational. We call that military terms, still being used. But they're fragile. Aren't they fragile?
That part I'm not sure on. Back in the day when they first had them, yes. If you went a few knots too fast, wings will rip off.
Yeah.
Go too slow, it'll stall out.
Right, yeah, and then you had to, if they stalled out in flight, you had to drop it, a few thousand feet before you could restart them, or
Just depends on the situation.
the oxygen. Stalling is not a unusual thing, as I understand it, right?
I'm pretty sure they won't discuss how often those planes stall, but that's an old bird back in 1962.
Right, I'm sure they did a lot, yeah.
Well, from how it seemed, the bird's pretty stable. It's just you really have to watch how it flies.
Yeah. That's why I'm surprised they kept them. But they have reinforced the wings, and of course the what we call the sensor package underneath is lighter, right?
Well, not just that, but also paws on the side of it now if you were to see a modern-day picture of it.
I see. So it's electronic warfare pods, or
No idea. Wouldn't ask.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess we're on radio. We don't talk about.
Well, not just that. Growing up in an Air Force family, my granddad served in Vietnam.
Right.
So he taught me a few things.
Sure.
And with my dad working on the planes he did, I just knew not to ask what he's doing. He's working on these spy planes. I was like, yeah. So he's not going to talk about his job anyways. I'm not going to ask a question I know I'm not going to get an answer on anyways.
So your grandfather worked on these aircraft, or these types of aircraft, where? Okinawa, or?
At his time, he just wanted to be an engine mechanic. For him, fixing aircraft engines and the mechanics is just who he was. He was in Vietnam in 1968,
right?
But he also came to Taiwan twice, once in 1969 and once in 1972.
Okay, interesting time period. Okay. So did he like Taiwan?
He did. Actually, seeing in his old photo albums, I actually found his original orders of when he came here his first time.
All right. Where was he based?
That time I couldn't recall. I can't recall right now. I know I got the photo buried in my phone.
Probably CCK maybe, or...
No, it said straight out Taipei.
It was in Taipei. All right. Back then the Taiwan Air Force Base was open, and Songshan was pretty active air base, but I'm not sure what else there would have been. Sinju, I suppose, is close enough.
I know you mentioned that name once before.
All right, that could be very well true. But okay, so Vietnam, 1968. All right, that was a big year.
He was there for the Tet Offensive. He doesn't talk about it.
It was a very confusing year, or at least week of crazy New Year's celebrations. But yes, so were you always thinking about joining the military at some point in your life when you were a kid?
Oh, yes. When I was growing up in Okinawa, it started from there. But then also I realized, what can the military do for me on that part? Reason I say that is, if you can fix an Abrams tank, I was a United States Marine Corps 2146. That's the Military Occupational Specialty Code, or job. That's an M1A1 tank mechanic. You go work on diesels, which is on the M88A2 Hercules. And then also you can work on turbine engines, which is what the M1 Abrams uses, both the A1 and A2, similar to what Taiwan's getting here. But also you can work on hydraulics and some electronics equipment on it. So you get you a job skill that you already have certifications. And being in combat in Iraq back in 2003, that's not something you just get around every day.
So in the American military, you can go and apply for a school, maybe several schools, get accepted, and then like tank engines, and then you can go maybe later and apply for a different school, right?
Yeah. You can. What the term would be lateral move, pretty much changing your job. You can lateral move after your first contract. Now, some jobs don't allow that because of just the expertise. Like my younger brother, he's a nuclear technician on a submarine. His case, you're going to do a 5-year enlistment because of how long that school is. You're looking at a year and a half of schooling.
Yeah.
All right. Well, in this case, you're going to do a 5-year contract, and generally that's what they do, or a lot just either you're going to stand and just do that, or you're going to get out.
So they're looking at their investment in time and money, educating you, and we don't want to lose you after 6 months or a year to airborne or some other program that requires less investment.
Well, something like, say, airborne or jump school, a lot of Marines don't get that, so they can use that as a re-enlistment incentive.
Interesting that they would do that. Yeah, somebody who was in the Marine Corps and said, look, I really wanted to go to jump school, but now I'm thinking about going back to my hometown and going to college or getting married, and they can say, well, airborne's still open. We can still get you those wings.
Well, it depends on your job. Say if you're going MARSOC, or Marine Special Operations capable.
Right. What is MARSOC, first of all?
That's pretty much the Marine Corps version, and that's in SOCOM.
Special Operations Command.
Now, the thing is, Marine Corps also has their own indigenous unit, Marine Force Recon. That only falls under the Marine Corps itself. MARSOC falls under SOCOM. The Marine Corps has their own that does not fall under command of anything else except for the Corps itself.
I see. So then I have to ask the typical man question, which is better?
It just depends on what you're looking to do.
Which is tougher?
Each one's different.
Yeah, there you go. That's a typical military answer, that things depends on the mission.
Well, not just that. If you just want to fall under the Marine Corps itself, you would want Force Recon. Now, if you want MARSOC, but you're still going to work with other agencies, but just how, when I say agencies, like say you work with Navy SEALs or anything else that falls under Special Operations Command in and of itself. Myself, I want to go be an MP and wanted to be a dog handler.
Oh.
That card was never played, but I was able to still travel to foreign lands and see many different things and see the evolution of the military police field from what it was when I joined and was loaned out temporarily for 6 months when I was a tank mech.
Okay.
Under the Fleet Assistance Program for 6 months to the MP field, saying how it was then in 03 to when I lateral moved 6 years later after embassy duty.
Right, lateral moves. That's a common phrase that you should learn in the military. We had a previous guest who was an Apache helicopter mechanic who made the lateral move to pilot school.
Chief Warrant Officer.
And it worked. So he had the benefit, two very good skill sets, right? He had the training of a maintenance guy, and he knew and a lot of pilots didn't. And when they went to do a flight check, with his ground crew, he would look at the helicopter and check it out, and the flight crew would say, "Oh, big trouble." He just noticed a problem because he knows that's not going to. So he probably saved his life a few times.
One thing, the Marine Corps, being a Marine Corps tank mechanic, we don't always have full numbers of, say, Marines. So what we try to do, how the Marine Corps operates their tanks when we had them, and how the Army operates, we have different doctrines because different history and the numbers and how we deploy. Neither one is wrong. It's based on the history of how it was.
Right.
So what we try to do is we'd like to put one tank mechanic in every 2 tanks.
That's a great idea. Yeah.
One, it saves numbers of trying to get extra tankers, but also we'd sometimes work in pairs, so if something goes wrong mechanically, you got someone on station already that knows how to fix it.
Right.
And also, if you can fix it, you can use it.
Right. And tanks, despite the movies, they had to be hauled around.
The Abrams in OIF-1 and Operation Iraqi Freedom 1, no, the ones that had to get hauled around were the AAVs, or amphibious assault vehicles, similar, exactly what Taiwan has.
Right.
But they were not meant to go 150, 200 miles inland all the way to Baghdad.
Right. See, I noticed that, and I thought, well, that was very strange. I thought they had to haul those things around.
Abrams didn't have that problem, or at least first tanks didn't. Neither did second tanks. Now, when Iraq War started back in 2003, first tanks and second tanks, each one had a slightly different doctrines on how we're approaching our mechanics and our combat repairs.
Right.
What second tanks would do is hey, they were sometimes a little slower, but they had larger numbers. We wanted stuff fixed and rolling out right away.
Right.
So when each side would get exhausted or slightly needed to slow down, the other one could pick up where the other one needed to rest or maintain and repair their equipment.
Okay. All right. So these units that were moving sometimes quicker than the Army, that was a problem, I'm sure.
We We sometimes outstripped our supply, and we actually had to slow down. But the funny thing is, Taiwan also has the AVLBs, Armored Vehicle Launch Bridges.
Right.
Funny
yes.
thing is, that actually slowed down the whole front in OIF-1 because how
In
slow
Iraq, or
because how slow they were.
okay,
So,
all right.
but that also had the advantage of helping our logistics train out because, well, this thing can only go about 30 miles per hour going downhill.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. Right. But when you think of a desert, you don't think of rivers. Of course, they did have lots of rivers.
Funny story on that, too, and also lots of farming fields.
Wet.
Well, strangely enough, the one day where there was a giant sandstorm that said, it stopped the whole war for a day. Yeah, didn't stop nothing. I remember walking that stuff for about a good 10 hours.
Right.
That didn't slow us. No, it slowed us down, but didn't stop us.
Uh-huh.
But that same night, it was raining cats and dogs.
Right.
Luckily for once, I didn't have to do fire watch at night, so I was in the troop truck and it was pouring rain the whole time.
Great, so you don't have to get wet.
Oh, no, we still got wet, but just not as much.
Right. What do you do in a truck all night? Just sit around, sleep?
Well, the closest thing you could watch at the time, or today, is Generation Kill from the HBO miniseries.
Ironically, a movie about killing and during the same war you're in.
Well, the thing is, two of the people from that series, it's based off a book, they actually play themselves. The sniper guy and the Hispanic guy, those aren't actors. Those are the guys that
they
were there.
in the truck with you. Saying,
no, those were the guys in Marine Recon.
All right.
That were actually there, and they helped HBO with that miniseries, and how they acted, how they talk. That's how we talk in combat arms units.
You know, that was an interesting TV show for the readership, or not readership, but the listener. What was the name of the show again?
Generation Kill.
Yeah, no, that's an authentic TV series that was running during the war, ironically, written by a guy who had been the
embedded reporter.
Oh, I thought it was a lieutenant.
Nope, Rolling Stones reporter, and he
was that Nathan Fick?
I know that. I just know he's a Rolling Stones reporter. But the thing is, he wrote the TV series, well, the HBO miniseries, and the book have the same title.
I thought Nathaniel Fick wrote the book Generation Kill.
Well, I just know he's a Rolling Stones reporter.
Yeah.
I've read the book.
He died, didn't he?
That part I can't. Not sure.
I'm not sure. We're gonna have to check the Google sometime soon. Anyway, so you're a young man in the military, and you're going through this. You've already decided at what age?
5.
5 to join the military. Okay. So I'm sure your parents are thinking, he's 5. Who knows? Kids.
Well, remember, it's a different era.
Right.
It was during the Cold War.
Mm.
And also my mother's father was the one who was in the Air Force in the past.
Right.
So my parents didn't say you have to join the military. It's your choice. And you don't have to join the Air Force, do what you want with it, but also try to get the job you want.
Mm.
Now, one thing I was taught, pick your top 3 jobs and get it in writing.
Yes, in the military, right. See, you had a lot of training before even going to join the military on how to get what you wanted. And a lot of people who join the military in America don't realize the paperwork they're signing forces them to do certain things they don't have to do.
Well, they don't realize it. And some of the recruiters, they're just doing their job. They're just trying to get stuff taken care of.
Right.
But people don't realize, I don't even have to go to this recruiter. I've told some people later on, it's like, hey, that recruiter won't get you that job. Don't worry. There's another guy that wants to help make his quota. Go find him. He'll get you your job. You may have to be on the delayed entry program, but if you have to wait a year to get your job, this is your life and you can only do it once.
Mm.
So if that recruiter would say, hey, I can't get you the job right now, but I can put you on the delayed entry program and you can get it next fiscal year.
Delayed entry program.
So what you can do is do that then. And if you don't like the job and you still want to stay in the military, you can change your job. And maybe what you were looking for at first was doing this, but you don't like it, or it's just not what you were expecting. You can still stay in and get a different job, and it still gives you that skill set.
Right. Well, there you go. Yeah, it's how hard is marriage, or not marriage, but how hard is it to be married and happy in the military? When your father is running around, taking off, never knowing when he's going to be back. That must it must have impacted your life in some ways.
Well, for myself, it was fairly easy because that's how I grew up. My mother, though, because of her father being that, she knew what my father would have to do that at times.
Right.
Some military wives can't handle it, but my mother could because her father's experience.
So this is a military family going back a generation or two.
Pretty much since the late 50s. My granddaddy told me old stories about Army Air Force, the old Army Air Corps officers being in. It's like, yeah, you're old, Grandpa.
When I was a young man, those guys were normal. Where did he fly, or did he?
Well, no, he was a mechanic. That's all he did.
Right.
He's just a mechanic. When they put him in dealing with ordnance, he wanted to retire after that. He's a mechanic at heart, so he's like, "Yeah, you're gonna put me in ordnance. I want to work on aircraft." No, okay, I'm out.
Okay, ordnance. What is that exactly?
Explosives.
Yeah, see, that's another very good reason not to be involved.
Well, if you make one mistake, you don't have to worry about it again.
Putting bombs on airplanes, not my idea of, particularly in a very hot desert environment.
Or in this case, Guam.
Guam, yeah. Wow, huge. So your family was very close.
At times.
Okay, and your brother, what did he end up doing?
Older brother joined the Army.
Okay.
At first, he was a refrigerator mechanic in the reserves.
What?
Later on, he would join. You see, in the U.S. military, you can actually join at 17. But you have to get parental permission.
Right.
He joined the Army Reserves.
That's normal.
Now, later on, he would join the Army and be public affairs.
Oh, PAO.
Now, my younger brother, he would later on, after high school, he would join the Navy and be a nuclear technician on attack submarines. You have nukes, or they're either on aircraft carriers or subs. Mm-hmm. If you're on one, you're not leaving that spot. You're there forever.
Wow. I hope you get your own bunk room.
Well, that's not necessarily that. If you're on an aircraft carrier, because remember, it's a different system.
5,000 people.
Well, not just that. The nuclear reactor itself on a Los Angeles class boat is not going to be like what you have on a Nimitz class carrier.
Yes, of course. But he dealt with nuclear weapons, right?
No, just nuclear technician.
Okay.
He's just a nuclear propulsion system.
All right. And did he live a long life?
He's fine. I remember him, but he did tell me this. He mentioned this, like if you're on a Chinese boat, you will get cancer.
Oh, Russian too. Yeah, the Russian boats are also terrible.
I was like, fair enough.
Yeah. Well, you don't have to worry about that, I don't think. Why did your brother decide to join the Army and not the Marines like you or the Air Force?
I didn't get along with him too well, so it's funny. The Army and Marine Corps sometimes don't get along.
I see.
My younger brother, sailor, well, we get along just fine.
Okay. So did he stay in for his 20 years?
Yes, but I actually retired earlier. I took the temporary early release authority, or TERA, where the military is drawing down their numbers, so you could sometimes retire at 15, which is what I took.
All right. And what year did you join? How old were you?
19.
Okay, out of high school, and then it took another year for you to make
it took me a year to get in, to get some paperwork done.
Oh, really? Okay. Why? Because of what schools you wanted to go to, or
something similar to that.
Okay, and that was paperwork in the military is nonstop, right?
Pretty much. And when I went embassy duty, that is a beast in and of itself. Everyone, for instance, in embassy duty, when you go to MSG school, or Marine Security Guard school,
right? It's
in Quantico, Virginia. Thing about that is everyone will get psychologically examined. The first thing you do is take a test. You will take a test first. And if you saw any combat, you will see the wizard or the psychiatrist or psychologist.
I hate to ask you who the wizard is.
Just a psychiatrist.
Okay, yeah. So if you've seen combat, you go to see the wizard. for what? Analysis?
Just to make sure the person's okay there. Because if you're on embassy duty, you are representing the U.S.,
right?
Not just the Marine Corps, because something else to consider.
Right. Oh, yeah.
You may be the only Marine they see in this country, and if you make that bad impression,
right.
You just made not the Marine Corps look bad, the whole United States look bad.
It's a very diplomatic, sensitive position. Yeah, I can see why. Yeah, if you've been in combat, you're not afraid of pointing your rifle at people. Whereas at an embassy, you might have to be a little bit more flexible.
Well, not necessarily that. You have to be willing to make judgment. You have to be able to make the calls and make it properly. Because we had at the time when I went to MSC school, we had a shooting trailer. You would actually get a handgun. You would actually simulate an environment within this trailer. And they could change the scenario at a moment's notice. Snap of their finger, they can change how the scenario goes.
So then suddenly you're in a kindergarten class.
Well, no, you'll be in an embassy building simulating that part.
Okay, all right.
Like what I went through, that first person was cooperating, but then he started to reach for something, drop it. As soon as I saw him where was reaching for a firearm.
Right.
You actually shoot rounds in this trailer.
Okay.
So in this part, you are actually having to shoot. Now it's it's actual ammunition, and sometimes the psychological factor of actually having to shoot or making a proper call. Some people just can't handle it.
Right. So they flunk out, right?
And even then, it's one of the few schools in the military you can actually just say, "I quit."
The military, totally.
For the MSG duty.
Okay.
That's also one of the few. It's one of the few jobs where you can actually say, "I want to go back to the fleet," being just the regular Marine Corps, because some of these posts are very hard mentally. Like for instance, Bujumbura, Burundi, a very rough neighborhood in Central Africa. You're not allowed to go out after dark.
Oh, really?
No, it's very dangerous here.
During the day as well, probably.
Pretty dangerous too.
Oh my God.
So some of these places, they will ask you very graphic questions. How do you feel about this thing happening?
Ugh.
And if you can't, it's like, hey, you ain't going there. It's like, hey, you know what? I can't do this.
Right.
And it doesn't even make you weak. It's like, hey, I can't handle this part. You're at least willing to say, hey, I need to go back.
Okay. So they give you that option. They don't want to scare you out of the Marines, but they also want to keep you.
Well, not just that. The job itself actually takes 3 to 4 years off your life expectancy.
What?
All right. You have 3 shifts if you're a watchstander.
Right.
So you say you work from 8 in the morning to in the afternoon. Then you work the early evening shift, and then you got the night shift. But then you say one day you work day shift, then tomorrow you work midnight shift, and then you have a day off, and then you work evening shift, and it shifts around the whole time for the next 3 years.
Oh my God. So it's exhausting.
And you will forget what day it is and even what month it is sometimes.
So what do you guys do to entertain yourselves or keep yourselves sane?
You learn to play Jedi mind games. You just do your job, or some Marines, they'll just call a random embassy and see how they're going. Or say if you want to go to your next post, you want to ask how is the area.
I see. So you're just like, look, I've applied for your embassy. Can you guys give me some advice? Is this a good job or?
Oh, not even that. Say, for instance, when I was changing posts from the Dominican Republic to Ghana, my plane, no matter what, had to lay over in London. So what I did is like, hey, instead of flying straight to Ghana, do a 3 or 4 day layover for a small vacation. But first, you call the Marine House or call them the Marine Guard in Post 1, ask them, hey, can I stay at the Marine House during this time period? Because sometimes they do have events going on or whatever may be happening.
Right.
Make sure it's okay. If they say it's okay, no problem. You may have to pay for the food you eat, not an issue. Okay. So I did the same thing going to Rome. When I was changing posts from Ghana to Paris, my plane, I went first to D.C., then Rome. No problem. Stay at the Marine House, and you get from the roof of the embassy, you can see the Coliseum.
Wow. Yeah. So these little layovers can turn into incredible experiences in your life. Yeah. Yeah. So you had to wait for your paperwork to get through. What'd you do for that year out of high school?
Well, went and worked with my granddad at his gas station in central Louisiana. He retired from England Air Force Base, which is now Alexandria International Airport.
Right.
But also heavily used by the Army base nearby at Fort Polk.
Okay. So you worked in a gas station pumping gas, I guess.
Mechanics.
You were a mechanic. All right.
I took auto shop class in high school.
All right. Smart move. Smart move. Well, the more skill sets a person has, the better, off they are in life in general. I always tell my wife, it's good that our children that have a college degree, but it's also good that they know how to fix an engine.
Well, not just that. For instance, a lot of military members don't know you can actually use a GI Bill outside the U.S.
Yes, we're talking about the bill in the next episode. The GI Bill allows you, a veteran retired, to go to college anywhere in the world, basically.
Well, there's some exceptions on that, but I can go into a little detail, and it's actually fairly easy and simple to figure out, even for the VA. They got it down pretty good.
All right. Well, yeah, that was very normal to get out of the military after 20 years, get another skill set, and then do a different job after that. For example, you were in military police in the U.S. Marine Corps. I assume that many guys who retire go to law school or law enforcement school and become either federal prison guards or some sort of additional job where they can get another 20-year.
Actually, a lot of former MPs don't even do it. They just get out and don't even do law enforcement.
They don't want to touch it again.
Most, yes. And, you get maybe 25% that just go straight into law enforcement. That's more the exception that go straight into law enforcement versus not.
But many do go into another federal line of work.
Some do, yes.
Right. They want to what we call double dip, which is that you get two federal pensions.
But your body gets pretty tore up, because myself, I got 5 pins on my left shoulder from a torn labrum, 2 plates and 6 screws in my face, a couple injuries from knives, both my knees, the tendons in both of them are halfway torn.
Okay. I think the military police is something I will not recommend to my children.
Well, it depends where you get stationed. I went to that Marine Corps.
Get stabbed.
Well, not necessarily. Actually, that didn't happen from that. But at Marine Corps Base Camp Pendleton, it's not if you can get in a fight, but when and how often. When I went to Marine Corps Air Station Iwakuni, very quiet base. So I go from LAPD of the West Coast to Keystone Cops where nothing happens.
Yeah, you never know.
Strange you mentioned that. Yeah,
it's that moment when you feel too comfortable, and then all of a sudden something goes down.
Well, actually, one day at Iwakuni, they actually turned the power off to the whole base because they're working on some of the transformers.
Right.
I still remember recommending to my hires, hey, can we get our sister night platoon to work with us? Because this place is going to go nuts before the power goes out, or as soon as it does, because Marines are going to be drunk and stupid.
Oh, not Marines, no.
No, like they thought, no, your platoon will be good. Yeah.
Not the Marine Corps.
But the thing is, the commands were out in force trying to make sure the Marines weren't doing anything crazy. No, the base still lost its mind prior to the power going out for the next 3 hours.
They had already been drinking.
Heavily. Because of my experience at Camp Pendleton, it's like, hey, sir, we might need our sister platoon. It's better to be out in force because...
Right.
Camp Pendleton Marines, you know what I'm talking about, right? It's like, yeah.
Yep. The U.S. Marines have a reputation in America and history of... being the wild ones. And if you're 18, 19, 20, 21, whatever, didn't go to college, you're still, you had high school, drinking and going crazy and having fights is kind of fun, actually, to their mindset. And they have often gotten into the newspapers all over the world. But we need them when the war starts because they are crazy. But look, we're wrapping this episode up, and it went by very quick. In the next episode, we're going to talk about your duty stations overseas and your training for the military police and what you learned from that and how you ended up in Taiwan. And we really want to talk more about Taiwan in the next episode. What you like about the place, why you chose to study Chinese here, and 7 years is a long time. So we're going to wrap it up. We'll talk to you again here, Richard, in the next episode.
No problem. Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you very much.